Maybe he's changing a diaper.
I don't think that's the location that he selected.
Right.
Probably not.
You said something fresh market.
Oh.
Fresh time? Fresh time work?
What was it?
Oh, yeah.
No?
We can go check the posting, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
some Michigan brand.
They had a lot of branches.
Are we ready then?
We're live.
Okay, we are live
Okay.
as we're talking about grocery stores. It
Important.
is 6:30, and with us is Patrick Knight, Mike Roth, Aaron Carlson, Ben Peters, Michael Berry, and myself. Joining us also is Chris Hood and Kim Dunsmore and
Bruce Kimmel from Ellers.
thank you, Bruce Ellers is here. All right, and potentially Craig in a few moments. We'll see. We will proceed however. Open forum, and as I scan the empty chairs this evening, I will quickly draw a close to open forum. It's
Yay.
online. So now we'll move on to the consent agenda and gain 4 minutes.
Mhm.
We do need to make an addition to the consent agenda. I see the additional bills are there,
Yeah.
but there's also the, oh, they aren't? Okay, we do have some additional bills to add along with hiring for a librarian custodian. Would anyone like to make a motion for those additions to the consent agenda?
I would make a motion for those additions.
Second that?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All right. Are we approving the amended consent agenda?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we all are.
We all is.
We're all good with that. And now that it is amended,
That's right.
here we go again, round 2, consent agenda.
Uh-huh.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the amended consent agenda.
I would move to approve the consented agenda.
Second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ben. Any further discussion? All in favor of the amended consent agenda?
Aye.
Aye. We're all set. Very good.
Yay. So good. That was a lot to read. And that was
We're
consented.
getting better at this. Then we'll move on to, or should we wait for a second and do something else? Are we waiting for?
I believe there's arrangements being made for Craig to join us.
All right.
We could hold our budget and levy hearing. I don't think it'll take very long.
Or do we want to wait a minute? I mean, would we like to
I
like?
mean, I won't talk about anything. We'll just see if anyone has any comments from the crowd.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, since
We're on to budget and levy hearing.
I mean, we could jump to the ordinance.
Yeah, I was just
And
going
then-
to say, do we want to do that?
Well, we do have a guest tonight, but
Yep.
I imagine Craig will want to participate in that
Yeah.
conversation.
I
Okay.
was thinking, if
All right.
well, if we just moved ahead to that second reading of that ordinance, and then we could come back around.
Sure.
Would that be
I
okay?
think so.
All right, so we're on the second reading for ordinance 2023 with parking revisions. Would we like to take a look at that, just kind of review it here for a second?
Did we hear any comments since the last time around? Nope.
No.
Okay.
But I was thinking about the sheriff's comments from the first time around,
Okay.
and not only his comments, but what other steps are we going to need to take? And I think it's going to take a few extra things in order for us to really be able to enforce the parking along the highway. We might need to think about signage.
Mhm.
And so I think we'll use the same strategy this time around that we did when we made calendar parking in effect, and create some informational placards to try and notice people that are in violation rather than
Yeah.
try to get to enforcement right away. And
Makes
see if we
sense.
can't get behavior changed that way first,
Yep.
and then talk to MinDOT about additional signage.
Well, and we'd
That
want
sounds fair.
signage regardless. I mean, whoever would come there, they need to know that, right? We need to sign it.
Yeah, and it might be that we only need to sign it in the place where it's a problem, even though it's technically the law of the entire strip of Highway 61 through town if you pass it tonight. it seems like there's really only a pretty limited spot where we need to make it obvious.
Yeah.
Well, and it seems to me to be appropriate, like when you first entered in either direction, you should let someone know that, as they're coming into town,
Sure.
that this is now covered underneath that.
Yeah.
Either way, but and then
Yeah.
a reminder, but yeah, signage, I'm sorry, I was just assuming there would be signage.
Is that something that we need to add into the ordinance, or
Nope.
that's just a function?
No,
of
just wanted to, continue
administrative?
his thoughts about
Okay.
how are we going to enforce this?
Yeah.
Mhm.
That it probably isn't going to be cleaned up in a day.
No.
Sure. Well, and I think that's appropriate too, to just make some personal contacts and a
Yep.
little awareness to
Yep.
Yeah.
people.
Because I think people will, I mean, even the, odd side, or not odd side, odd even moving in the city, that took a bit, but people have generally tried to do it,
Yeah.
to follow the rules, so.
And then, are there any lodging that needs specific, that isn't already aware or is affected by this change that's currently in operation that we need to let? I was thinking the answer is no, but,
There aren't any that don't have available off-street parking arrangements already.
Yeah.
okay, so we're covered
So-
there. And then just any new, that'll be part of what they're made aware of in writing
Yeah.
as we move
Yeah.
forward with
That's
the
right.
plans. Okay,
Okay.
all right.
Well, I would make a motion to, do I make a motion for this? Yeah, make a motion to adopt ordinance 2023-06.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
There we go. Thank you. Thanks to planning and zoning for
Mhm. Mr.
taking a
Ben?
look at that.
And
Do,
should we go back to the levy?
or, do you want to do a?
Oh, hang on.
Yay!
Yeah, it is good.
Hold on.
You get him?
Looks like it.
There he is.
Hi, Craig.
Yay!
You should probably mute while you're not talking, but it's nice to see you.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
the great and powerful Oz. There he is.
Okay. Or, can Patrick mute him in between, or no?
I can mute him, but I can't unmute
Mute
him
him,
afterwards.
okay, so Craig will have to mute and unmute then.
Yeah.
If there's
Okay.
any background. Is there background noise, Craig, or not really, where you're at?
No, not really.
I think his phone's doing a good job of
That's
pretty quiet.
modulating it.
Okay.
All right, good.
All right.
Great.
So now we'll move on to budget and levy hearing.
Mm-hmm.
Craig, we just did the second reading on the parking changes and approved that while we were waiting.
Okay.
So that's taken care of. And then now we'll go back to the regular scheduled program.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
would you be willing to switch the budget and levy with the CIP resolution, since we have a guest?
Sure?
Sure.
Yep.
That works.
And then we'll let Bruce take over for a minute and
Yeah.
okay, Bruce, you're up.
All right, thanks, Mike, and thank you, Mayor and Council. Bruce Kimball with Ellers, and I'm here to guide you through the public hearing on the capital improvement plan that is required for the issuance of capital improvement plan bonds for a portion of your city hall and liquor store project. I'm not going to walk through the entire fairly dry CIP document here, but I do want to hit a few highlights, and so transfer over to that. I guess what I wanted to note and make sure that everyone was aware of this is, as we understand it, and this is stated in page 6 of the CIP document, you're currently planning, or the current estimate of the combined facility is $8.5 million. with City Hall comprising about 5.2 million of that total 8.5. As you know, the city has cash reserves that it's planning on applying to both the City Hall and the liquor store part of the project. And so this CIP document contemplates the issuance of up to $3.8 million in general obligation CIP bonds towards the City Hall portion, with the remainder of the costs coming from city cash reserves. So this document in this public hearing is really just about the $3.8 million subtotal within the $8.5 million total estimated cost. And of course, we know that combined facility costs might be higher, it might be lower, and that's not really a factor here. It's just, I wanted to give you a little bit of background on how we got to the $3.8 million for the CIP bonds. There are a number of statutorily required questions that we needed to answer in the document. Some of them really don't make a whole lot of sense, but they are several of the factors that are required by state law for this type of document. So you see that we addressed them. It talked about the possibility of shared facilities. That's not really an option. Operating costs of the improvements, availability of public resources, and several other factors. And then in the next section, under financing, we did confirm that the city absolutely has more than enough statutory authority for this type of finance, both within your overall debt limit, that's based on the city's estimated market value, then also as it relates to the CIP bond limit. You do have some outstanding CIP bonds, and when we combine the remaining bonds there, in debt service there with the new bonds and new debt service, you still have plenty of unused debt capacity. And we are structuring these new bonds, the CIP portion of the new bonds at City Hall, around the 2017 bonds so that we stay well within the city's statutory maximums for this type of debt. Again, these are just requirements under state law. They don't really speak to the tax impact of the debt or the overall affordability of the project. You just need to check these boxes to make sure that you're not exceeding the formulaic maximums that are laid out in this. Then moving on to the Appendix A, this is a debt schedule, an estimated debt schedule for the overall financing. And you can see that we are spending just under $3.8 million in bonds all portion of the project, about $2.4 million in bonds for the liquor store portion of the project, an estimated $2.5 million of city cash reserves into the project, and then you can see the estimated use of funds, including cost of issuance for the bonds, of course the $8.5 million estimated project cost for the total facility, and you can see how both of those sources and use funds fully covered. Then all I just wanted to do is point out the debt service, estimated debt service schedule for the City Hall CIP portion of the project. And again, we're wrapping this debt around your remaining 2017 debt from the Public Works facility. We also really padded these interest rates, so these numbers should be high. Rates have actually come down a good amount since we last ran these numbers, so they're even more conservative than we wanted to make them when we ran those last month. And that's about it for the document itself. There is also a resolution for your consideration. This is really the resolution authorizing this bond CIP document, if you will, and the issuance of up to $3.8 million of bonds under the CIP authority for the City Hall project. The last thing I should note, I failed to note this at the outset, we are anticipating that the liquor store portion of the project would be paid for using something called tax abatement bond authority. And we'll be back at another meeting, excuse me, we'll be back at another meeting to discuss the tax abatement portion of this project and the overall plan of finance sometime, early in the new year. We just wanted to focus on this CIP proceeding and the public hearing for that to move this process forward and complete the requirements for the tax abatement portion and the overall bond issue are less onerous. So let me stop there and ask if you have any questions about the CIP document, the plan of finance as it currently stands, or about the resolution that you're being asked to adopt tonight.
So what's the difference in interest rates presently? So they have dropped somewhat?
Could you say that again?
On your
What's-
microphone.
Oh, sorry. What's the difference in interest rates right now? You said they've dropped a bit?
Yeah, actually, they've dropped almost 50 basis points or 0.5%. And if you look at the header of this bond schedule, we're already padding the rates by about 75 basis points. So if you were to sell these bonds today, I would venture to guess that, or not even guess, that the interest rate would be about 1% plus lower than what we're estimating here.
Okay.
All right.
We really just wanted to make sure that even if interest rates were somewhat higher than our estimate, that you would still be comfortably within the statutory maximums for this type of bond.
Okay, thank you.
Gotcha.
I just want to interject. Craig, I muted you, so if you want to talk, you'll have to tap your screen and touch the mic icon.
All right.
Well, I will move up to the resolution and then we can have any discussion. So hold on while I get back to that resolution number. Would anyone like to make a motion for Resolution 2023-19 for the approval of the general obligation capital improvement plan bonds not to exceed 3.8 million?
I'll make that motion. Or, go ahead.
I'll make the motion.
Alrighty, second?
I'll second.
Okay. Further discussion, questions, concerns?
Any questions? I thought it seemed dryish. I didn't really see
Yeah.
anything that, to me, made any like, whoa, that's definitely wrong. So,
Yeah, I don't think there's any errors in here. I do think there are some variables worth remembering.
okay.
How much cash are we going to put towards the project? What is the total cost of the project? Some of
Right.
these things maybe don't feel quite resolved yet.
Yeah.
I mentioned right before the meeting that we did receive a guaranteed maximum price proposal from McGough today.
Ah,
And it's not
that's
in your
awesome.
packet because we've got it just now. But it's 8.5 million,
Okay.
so we're right there, which is good news.
Yeah.
Better news because there are very likely outside funding sources, grants, that we'll be using to help pay for this, including the reimbursement for our geothermal ground source, and potentially others. So it gives us a little extra wiggle room on what the number is, which we're going to need because the 8.5 million doesn't include all of our temporary costs for not being here.
Right.
And we'll talk a little bit about that more when we look at next year's budget because it's quite relevant.
Okay.
And then I think the other thing to consider is, okay, he's giving us a thoughtfully conservative number, including an annual payment. And the annual payment starts out at, 230 or so. This does not include the liquor store portion of the debt. So
Right.
what we had built into our budget was a payment around 360, which we can do that with these numbers, and very likely, he's telling us if we sold it today, it wouldn't even be this high. So that feels good, that even if things change, we've got an ability to adjust and should be able to do this project the way we planned.
Okay. Craig, did you have any questions or comments?
No.
Okay.
Okay. And with that, so all in favor of Resolution 2023-19?
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Aye? Aye, all right, I believe that is unanimous. Thank you.
So, since Craig is remote, you gotta do a roll call vote.
Okay.
Okay, very good.
All right. So, then I just have to go around,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Aaron?
Aye.
Ben?
Aye.
Myself? Aye. Michael?
Aye.
Craig?
Aye.
Okay. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
Right. You know, it's kind of anticlimactic. For all the many years we have worked on this, and now we're, like approving major portions of the finance, and it went like this. Like, I want fireworks or something.
Well, we haven't sold the debt yet.
Oh.
Well, thanks, Bruce.
Yeah, thank you, Bruce.
Thank
you.
you. We'll talk to you soon. Happy holidays.
Yeah, you
Thank
too.
you.
Take care.
All right, so now we'll switch back to budget and levy.
Once
We're going
again.
right backwards on this agenda.
Exact. Whoa.
Maybe that's the secret.
Secret sauce right there.
Something.
Well, we made some changes. So
Yeah.
let's start with the spreadsheet that's first in the packet entitled Historical Levy and Spending. This shows the levy and then splits out the levy by the amount that goes towards the general fund and then the amount that we're using to pay each debt issuance that has levy portion. And for the total proposed levy for 2024 at this point is $1,079,742 and change. That's just over 3% over last year's number, and a little bit lower than what we looked at in September. And so let's talk about what's included in that, and then we can figure out why is it lower, and how are we going to be able to do this project with it, which I think are the most important questions of the evening, but please add more if you have them. So the 2024 draft budget, you can see the historical spending from 2018 to 2022 broken down by functional area. You can also see last year's approved budget for 2023. We don't have the actuals yet, okay?
I just have one question starting off. When we're looking at these past numbers,
Yes.
Has inflation been calculated in so that we're looking, apples to apples, or no?
No.
This is just, these are 2018 dollars we spent in 2018.
That's right.
Okay, gotcha. Just wanted to double check.
Yep, that's good clarification, thanks for that.
Yeah.
So clearly, there's been some lately. That's good to note. And actually, let's scroll back up to the first spreadsheet, and I want to point out one of the effects of that. We have something on this spreadsheet called the effective tax rate. This is something that is a percentage that's applied to the taxable tax capacity of a property that calculates how much each property pays in taxes. It's a simple way to understand whether or not the levy goes up and down, whether you should expect your actual property tax payment to go up and down if your property value stays the same. And of course it never does, and there is no easy way to predict this sort of thing, but you get an idea that if the levy goes up, the effective tax rate goes up. If the property values go up, the effective tax rate goes down. And it's kind of hovered around that just under or just over 50% mark until 2023. And then you'll notice it drops way down from 49.77 to 35.93%. The levy didn't go down, it went up. It went up 2.75%, and the effective tax rate went down dramatically. And that's because the city saw about a 30% increase, maybe more than that even, in
home
property
values.
valuations in 2023.
Got it.
So wouldn't surprise me if we saw that again in 2024. Now, that's an across-the-board increase. So That's not something where folks are everyone's gonna see their property tax payment go down. It's just that their valuation went up and the rate went down, and so their property tax payment shouldn't move very much, perhaps even just this 3% that we're proposing. So
Gotcha.
back to the budget itself. You can see there are some increases here. I don't think any of them are particularly of note in what we're planning on spending in 2024 versus 2023. The revenue numbers are worth talking about, and we'll jump into a few of those. This is how we calculate how much we need to actually put in the levy in order to make the budget balance. The biggest change in the revenue numbers is the rec parks revenue, which was at $1,527,000, I think, in that area, and now it's $1,575,000. And their actual collections in 2023 are more like $1,590,000. So this is still a conservative number, and I think it's helpful for us to stay conservative at this point, because this is a big project we're undertaking with a lot of unknowns. And even though things look promising right now, it doesn't take very much of a course correction at $8.5 million to make a big difference. So I think it's worth us staying a little bit conservative here, rather than trying to drop that levy down even more by increasing this number. Let's look at the change summary from September's views to the current. There's a net decrease kind of across the board in all of our areas where we've got health insurance included in the costs. And that's most of this decrease. Is our estimate that we included in September was a little bit higher than the actual number we ended up with, which is great news. The other piece of the decrease you can see is the library actually lowered quite a bit more than that, and that's because at their full complement of 3 full-time people, they're not using the health insurance, all 3 at the highest possible rate. So the library board talked about whether they would make this adjustment, and this is the number that they've asked us to change. So this is what's included in our number, and we also forwarded to the county to include in theirs. So a total decrease of almost $40,000 on the expense side. On the revenue side, we decreased the revenue for buildings by $39,000. That is the amount that the liquor store pays the general fund for the rent of City Hall. $3,000 a month is what we've built into that number. We're not going to be collecting that for most of 2024 because they won't be in this building, and so we've taken that number out. We're not taking it out of what we expect to spend in the liquor store, however, because we're going to have to pay rent somewhere, and we're getting close to being able to talk more specifically about that with you, but we're still working on that. The fire revenue went up a little bit. This is a calculation that's based on a joint powers we have with the county for us to collect property taxes from the fire area outside the city limits, but that we do respond to. So those folks pay property taxes that actually support the fire department, and it's based on a calculation of the ratio of the value of the area outside versus inside, and then a ratio of the number of calls outside versus inside. And usually it's been the valuation is higher outside and the number of calls is higher inside. The rec parks increase in revenues in there at almost $50,000 above what you saw in September. It could potentially be more because, like I said, they were more like $1,590,000 this year. They also approved rate increases for next year. So all things being equal, I'd expect to see this number more like $1,650,000 next year, which would be great news. And then the library, there's a little bit of decrease in revenue, which is the half that we expect the county to pick up because we share that $20,000 decrease in the expense half with them. So that's a net change of $38,000 to the good. That's the amount that the levy has decreased since September. How does this match up with what our projections were and how we're going to plan on making these payments for a massive $8.5 million capital improvement starting potentially in 2025. So 2024, the current number is a little bit higher than our initial projection. Our initial projection included a little more on the debt side and a little less on the general side. It netted out some rec park revenue addition that was less than what we're putting in here, but we also added a big chunk to what we call council priorities, and this is basically money that is set aside for council priorities such as City Hall. And so right now, this money is going to get put in the bank, but come 2025, when we start making debt payments, all of that money is going to disappear from the council priorities line item and is going to reappear in the debt payment line item. So in 2025, you can see a new debt payment of $360,000, and we're going to make that payment by using 175 council priorities, 50 of reserves the first year, 50 of additional money from the utilities, 40 of additional money from rec park revenues, and a little bit more in the levy itself to get to that 360. That feels doable to me. I think we've got options here too. If some of these things don't work out, I would expect that the amount that the electric fund, for instance, is going to pay towards the debt payment is quite a bit more than 50 all by itself. If we look at the way that we're paying for the public works facility and we look at the way that City Hall is actually used, it's more than half really of the utility headquarters, more than City Hall. The 40 in additional rec park revenue, we've looked at that chart before where we can actually look at a regression line over the past 15 years and see that it expects more than 40,000 in gains every year. Sometimes in the worst case scenario in the past 15 years, it was flat. So, that's a small risk that we don't get the 40, but it's much more likely that we get more than the 40 to put towards this payment. And then the one-time use of reserves is just a way to keep that first payment from having a giant levy increase. And it disappears in 2026, and we've picked up the entire payment in the levy itself, with, again, all those additional things that are down there making that payment. So the levy in 2026, although this number at the top says $1,140,000, it would actually be that plus the 360, so it's $1,500,000 starting in 2026. If we don't have those other people coming in there and making those side payments. So it's a lot of potential levy increase that we're not going to have because we have so many different options for us to help make this payment. And that's just great news. So does anybody have any questions about any of the things we've looked at here?
I don't know why I was maybe expecting to see a change in the public safety budget.
Feels like a potential to go either direction at this point
Okay.
still. And
Yeah.
since here we are in December and we haven't started that conversation, I don't anticipate that changing next year. And if it does, we can talk about that. I think we've got some ability to still do that. And to talk about that ability, let's hold off, because at a future meeting, when we talk more about the other piece of debt we're going to use for this, we also need to talk about, well, how many of our reserves are we going to set aside towards this project?
Mhm.
And how many are we going to keep for some of our other unanswered questions?
Okay.
Right.
And that's one of them, in my mind.
And so, Ben, was your expectation that it would go down?
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
And we've seen both proposals, like it could be twice as much or half as much, and we don't really know how that's going to shake out yet. And there's also a potential for us to use some of those savings to add some of our own
Sure.
resources. So it's an unknown right now.
Okay.
All right.
Not that, trying to find my way back to the library, not that it is a large amount, but the library's decision to change their estimate on healthcare costs based on actual individuals, and I don't know how you do the other departments, but it would seem to me you'd want to find an average because employees come and go, or their needs around health insurance could change mid-year. You know, at one point, oh, maybe a certain person doesn't need a family member covered, and then that changes.
Right.
Or it's a new employer, or whatever. And you'd think you'd want to find more of an average or even a more conservative, higher amount to cover that. Or maybe the amounts are small enough that it doesn't really affect the budget.
When we look at the whole city's budget, just the fact that our staff comes and goes from different departments does kind of average out, and we can adjust as needed without making big changes. When it's drilled down to one department like this, well, you can see the big changes at work. I mean,
Yeah.
it could just as easily go the other direction. And so one of the reasons why we're comfortable with this reduction is we looked at the alternative of what if we just leave it as it was and plan on collecting more in revenues than they're going to spend and just set that aside and have a little nest egg to use to make adjustments when they go up. And, well, the reason we're not doing that is because we did that the past 2 years, somewhat inadvertently. But with staffing shortages and COVID and floods and other reasons, the library just hasn't been open as much as we plan on it being open. And so they haven't spent as much as we plan on them spending. So they actually have a nest egg already, which we can use to adjust back if we need to.
Okay, got
Yeah.
it. It's good to know.
Yeah, and I guess in our discussions, it was that along those same lines, we were just saying like, well, this is what we know, so we're just going to go with this. And it was nice to be able to reduce the budget, so
Okay.
that's part of it.
All right. Yeah, and some of these other line items, we haven't really, I mean, when Ben's talking about public safety, we have all these other agreements, and we haven't moved along on them yet. So it
Right.
seems like there'll be topics affecting next year, really. I mean, you've given estimates, like the Y contribution,
Yeah.
the slate up to it, which is fine. But it looks like we would potentially be looking at a lot of those next year then. These conversations continue.
I would anticipate that, yeah,
Yeah.
and early enough that they'll be able to inform next year's budget discussion.
Yeah, right.
Right, early on.
Yeah. Okay. Craig, did you have anything?
I think you're muted, Craig.
He's looking, I think.
There he is.
I didn't hear everything that you had said, Tracy, that last time. Can you recap what you were talking about there?
Sure. I was just asking, since the library, their health insurance costs had gone down simply because of specific individuals' needs as opposed to just the cost of insurance in general, and asked, do we not take an average because people come and go, or within that, people's needs change within family members? That's all real common. So are we potentially setting ourselves up for an unexpected increase? And Mike pointed out that between unused costs with the library the last few years, and this happening in other departments within the city, that this can be, if it goes the other direction and needs an increase to it, that there's dollars there available to handle that. Should average out. Not that they're super large amounts, but that's a common thing to see that.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. No, I don't have any questions. I'm looking at, we're moving things around, and I understand how you can all work all that. I guess the biggest thing is when you roll something like this out, I'm kind of like looking at like 2025, 2026, 2027, once we start getting into that debt payment every year. I lost my access to my all the information you had. What did you have projected for a levy increase? I mean, was that something just projected for 2025? Was that like 2.71 or something like that? Is that what I remembered when I read that?
Look at this guy pulling it right. 2025 projection was about 3.35.
Okay.
2026 was 2.17. I mean,
that's
these
what I
are,
thought, 26.
it's
Close, Craig.
virtually impossible to know that we're going to hold to close to those numbers.
Yeah.
So what we're looking at is an analysis of what we imagine is going to happen, what we intend to do, and that there's definitely a realistic and believable scenario that creates a 3% levy increase for the next couple of years and absorbs the payment for an $8.5 million City Hall liquor store project. And this is something that we've been working towards for 5 to 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So the 2024 increase we're looking at is 3.13? 1.3, okay. And our preliminary meeting, we were at 5.7, or was it 6.1 or something? What was it? What did we set the levy, not to exceed?
It was 6.49, and it was 1,114,883.
Oh, we had those numbers coming at the rec park, and, okay, yeah, okay. Okay. I guess the only thing, one of my concerns as far as the liquor store goes is in the interim period.
Mm-hmm.
In that budget, has there been figures or money budgeted for the removal of the building?
Yes.
Okay. I was just curious about that, demolition and removal. And then, but there has not been any preliminary numbers as far as our temporary location or what that might cost us.
We haven't talked about that in the council meeting yet. We've done some
Okay.
work on that at staff level, and we're almost ready to have some more public conversations about that. I can say that I'm a lot less concerned about the costs of our temporary location than I am about the revenues of our temporary location.
Yeah.
I just don't know. And
Right. Well,
we
we
could
got the
potentially,
Care of our costs, right?
we typically transfer $200,000 from the liquor store to the general fund. That's built into this budget. That feels like an unknown to me. That's for sure the largest unknown that's still in this budget. And to me, the question about that is really one of either we increase the levy more so that we feel better about that risk, or we handle it with the amount of cash that we're going to use towards the project, and that's just built into the cash towards the project budget is some money to make the shortfalls.
Right.
Most of the liquor store budget is purchasing inventory, but it's not like 80%. It's half, and so there's a lot of staff costs built into the liquor store operation that, frankly, we intend to carry through next year because we want our staff, all of them, to be here
Right.
throughout the
Yep.
year and when we
Yep.
have a new store ready to go. So I can't imagine that we're going to be able to perform as well at another location as we do here in the interim. We're going to do our best to, tell a great story about what's going on and get a lot of attention on it. And it's possible that, we capture as much of the sales as the facility allows us to, and we'll do that in a different location too.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we did talk just really briefly last time, just a heads up about some of these costs. Like, we need a really good marketing plan for this interim period, an advertising plan, as well as the new store when it comes in, and so there's costs there. And then there's going to be, of course, costs to getting this building cleaned out, getting things online, just those kinds of administrative costs as well. So, they're there, and as Mike said, either they build them into the larger project, or we absorb some of it, or a little bit of each. But I think we have to do, like any other retailer would, we need to put some dollars into making sure
Yeah.
people know where we are and we're in business,
Yeah.
and not just hope it happens. It's a cost of doing business,
Sure.
so.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think, Craig?
Yeah. Yeah, it's questions. That's all I have, I guess. I'm kind of concerned about those steps we have to take to relocate and those kinds of things, but we obviously know
Yep.
that's going to be part of the process of getting this building built.
Yep.
What, do we have a month in mind at just a high level of when we would maybe move and want to start getting operations changed? I mean, it doesn't have to
March.
be when the building goes, right?
March.
It does.
March.
Well, I meant
April.
like we could do it before if it
Oh,
made sense.
We could start, yeah, like we'll definitely, it won't be an overnight sort of thing. It's gonna
Yeah.
take some weeks to do the moving.
Mhm.
So, yeah, we've actually already started getting out of this building. And we've got some preliminary ideas for what we're gonna do operationally, City Hall stuff. And, the changes we've made in the past year allow a lot more interaction online with some of the typical things that people come into the office to do. So that one feels a lot more comfortable to me, although it's going to be incredibly difficult still, just to, the disruption will be significant.
Yeah.
The liquor store operations are the one that we just can't really answer that question. And there's a lot of money at stake for that transition period.
I
So-
just wondered, do we find the quietest time possible and get it shifted over and get it working and make sure it's there? I
Oh,
mean, March
yes.
is still gonna, but if it's by March, I guess we'll
Yeah, March,
hit
April.
most of that, and they should know what they're doing and be operational before things really pick up. But
Yeah, I think that March, April transition period is perfect.
Yep.
It's for sure the slowest time that we have, and it'll come in handy to get up to speed, because we really have a lot to learn about how to operate a temporary place. And then when we turn around and come back into this building, I mean, we don't really know when that's going to be yet either. The construction schedule was most of the year, so it might be the sort of thing where we're not in here by this time next year, and we have to make that transition again in a slightly busier time. But it's still the winter, which is, even though the, holiday parts of the winter are busy, they're a lot less busy than the summer. So it gives
Yeah.
us another opportunity to grow into the new space and really do some marketing and do some inventory, get grown back up to fill the space again, and think about what we want to be having and get everything arranged and even move it around a few times. It's just, it'd be good.
Yeah.
all right.
So there's no action required on this tonight. As a matter of fact, there's none allowed. You can't approve the budget the same day you have this public hearing. Our plan will be to come back to your next December meeting with a resolution that authorizes the levy, and it'll be at this amount.
Got it.
All right. So that ends our hearing portion of our meeting. And now, on to council and staff reports. Patrick, anything big you want to tell us about? Did that newsletter go out?
Yep.
Did we all get one?
I only sent it to you and the rest of the, I don't think I sent it to the council.
I couldn't find it. Let me do a search. What's a keyword I search in my email for?
Cook County Police.
Okay. All right, I'll search again. All right. Anything else?
That's all I've got right now.
Okay. Michael?
Yeah, well, you heard about the library budget piece, so that was kind of big news, so that was great. And then, other than that, and I didn't know about this other new hire, but besides the one, Garrett, the library also hired Mazzy Flynn as clerk, so that makes them complete. They've got all the members of their staff for the first time in quite a while, so that's great. They have some new programs coming up, one of which is Dungeons and Dragons. People should be excited about that. There's going to be a poetry workshop coming up in this month, and then Stacy Gerard is going to come in for a talk at the library. They bought a couple of new machines. They're getting an owl, or got an owl, purchased an owl for having meetings. Obviously, we're not going to be here at some point, and there was an idea that maybe we can have them back at the library like we used to. So library's purchased an owl, and then also their microfiche reader has been busted for a while. Where you can come in, you can read stuff, but you couldn't print anything, and so that was kind of not as useful as it could be. So they got a new one. It's just so funny to me that we're still working with microfiche, but we are. Anyway, they got a new one at a pretty good deal. The Scan Pro 3500. And then the old one is actually now over at the Historical Society because they can use it there. So that was a great deal, kind of a win-win. So that was the library.
Nice. Anything else?
And that was it. Yep.
Cool. Yeah, I read some of that. I think she had it in her reports too, right? Or did it hit
She
some
probably
bigger
did.
press?
Yep, it was in the weekly updates.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of cool.
And probably on some other press release areas.
Yeah, kind of neat. Ben?
Yeah, Mike and I met with North House Folk School again.
Oh, yeah.
It was a very, I thought, productive meeting. It's moving much, it's got a great focus, I think, now on the lease itself, right? They got
Okay.
some clarity from their board at large to be able to talk about some of those things. So we met, we ran over 45 minutes in our meeting, but because it was good, I think. And then where we left it was we're meeting again in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Just like I think on the 8th or 10th or 14th, 13th, I don't know, Monday. And we're going to kind of present our kind of what we would like to see in a lease. And they're going to do the same
Great.
thing. And we're going to have a couple of drafts to stare at and compare and contrast and maybe kind of get a little closer to a deliverable for both boards.
Yeah.
So.
It's great.
Yeah, talked a little bit about timelines. Nothing permanent or nothing fixed, but yeah, sooner the better.
Okay.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah, so it
in
was
the
good.
new year.
Yeah, it was good.
Meet again in the new year
Yes.
sometime.
Yeah.
Cool. Good. Thanks
That
for
would
all
be
your
good.
work. Look forward to that.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Aaron.
Yeah. Don't really have any updates.
Okay. Mike?
Well, Craig will probably tell you about what happened at the PUC meeting, so I'll skip those details. But I just wanted to give you some background stuff that's been going on, too. We've been dealing with a lot of licensing issues at the wastewater treatment plant. The MPCA has requested some procedural changes and reporting changes from us that we're working on. We're over there creating some new standard operating procedures for lab work and making some changes to how some of the metering is functioning. We've got one meter that is taking samples, because of course a lot of what happens over there is us regularly sampling the processes, reporting on that, but also using that information to dial in the actual operation of the plant. And the MPCA wanted one of the samplers to be taking a sample based on the flow rather than based on the time, so it was just taking, periodic, and they wanted it to be based on that volume instead. So we've brought in a vendor to come help get that set up correctly. And at the same time, the MPCA, we've been working on the renewal of the facility's
Right.
operating license
Right.
since, I think, 2014.
It's been a bit.
It's a 5-year license. Every 5 years it needs to be renewed, and I think it was almost 10 years ago that it expired, and that we've been working with them to renew it. Now, this isn't a bad thing. The existing permit is in place, and so we've got the limits that we still operate on, and it's not a punitive issue that's keeping us from getting it renewed. It's a discussion mostly about the variance limits that they were proposing and our need to, or the mercury limits and our need to get a variance from them, because we're not sure if it's possible to meet what they were proposing. And that process is moving along, which is good news. It's kind of not moved very fast for a lot of the time, but that's one of the reasons why we're still hanging out with a 10-year-old permit rather than renewing it. In the meantime, we applied for a renewal, and they've asked us to reapply. And this is also nice because they were trying to move this process along to allow us to make improvements to the plant. We can't really make significant capital improvements to the plant until the licensing it's part of the licensing process. And so they suggested to us, well, why don't you update your request for your new permit to include your capital improvement plan in it as a voluntary measure. So we're working on that too. It's a heck of a lot of things to get done in a department with a brand new department head. He's really stretched right now in terms of what we're asking him to do, and so we're stepping in as much as we can to help him out and we'll
Great.
get through it.
Great. Oh, man.
Anything else? No?
Well, let's see if Craig wants to talk about the PSC meeting.
Oh, you want to just keep on the topic? Sure. Craig? Did you have some things to add or other items?
Yeah, I wasn't at the meeting, I didn't get this, time notice in enough ahead of time, but I did review the meeting, and I'm trying to recall, we did a rate increase, for, sewer and water, but I'm trying to remember the exact numbers. Was it 2.5%, or was it 3% on the wastewater and 2%? No, 3% on the water, and what was the wastewater?
2%. Yep, 3% on water, 2% on wastewater.
Yeah, 3% increase on water and 2% on sewer for the upcoming year. And I think a lot of that is just driving. We put all cash into that Fifth Street project, so that was quite a bit of money that we spent. So it's just basically, protecting our infrastructure so that we can keep improving whatever pieces of it that we can, So that was the increases that we did
Okay.
last week. I think that was about it. What else was on that? It was kind of a short meeting.
Yep, that's the gist of it, right there. Yeah. Hey, and I'd forgotten you weren't there, Craig. Thanks for taking care of that.
Yeah, I watched it. Right after you had the meeting, I watched it. But then, I was gonna zoom in. It's like, oh, okay. I didn't realize. I knew we had this 3-day advertising, but I wasn't sure if it pertained to advertising a meeting prior, like the PUC too, but anyway. I'll be better prepared next time.
So I'll just give one highlight from that conversation then, when, at the wastewater budget, that it's a 2% increase. This is a time when we're looking at potentially a $10 million project to make improvements to the plant. How can we do that and only have a 2% increase? That seems crazy. And maybe it is, frankly, a little crazy. But we're not planning on spending $10 million of local funds on an improvement to that plant. I don't think it's possible.
No.
We don't really know how much we're going to have to come up with. We know it'll be significant, but we're going to keep looking for help for a while before we make those multi-million-dollar improvements. In the meantime, the budget could have actually been a decrease because some operational changes at the wastewater treatment plant have reduced the amount of sludge that we haul. We've talked about that maybe in the past, but we took about half of what we expect those savings to be and built them into the budget next year. So it's possible that if that becomes something that we're able to perform regularly, we could actually see somewhat small increases for the foreseeable future, building towards, just like we're doing here for City Hall, the ability to absorb a pretty significant payment for debt. The trick with water and with wastewater is not only are we looking at that wastewater $10 million project, but we're also looking at a potential First Street reconstruction project and how are we going to make that payment. So they have an ongoing debt schedule where we're actually going to drop off some debt payments in 2024 and in 2025 and in 2027. And so by the time we get to 2027, we'll have the ability to replace those in the budget without having to make too big of increases, although I'm sure there'll be a lot bigger payments these days. Yes, and so in 2024, we did pick up the first debt payment for Fifth Avenue, and it's about half of what they're going to be when they're fully operational. So,
I was kind of curious, somewhat related to this, on Fifth Street. When I first joined the council, understanding all the water issues we had, one of them I remember was the loss of water as the water went up Fifth Street. And now that should be corrected, I'm assuming, with all of our new pipes. Have we seen, or can we measure a difference in the amount of water from that?
I don't think so. That it's not just Fifth Avenue where that happens. It's on all of our older pipes. We did replace on 2nd Street one chunk of older 4-inch that was, pretty old to be a 4-inch pipe still in town. And the stuff that was in Fifth Avenue was mostly bigger. All of it was in okay condition, It's you still have to replace it when the street's being reconstructed when it's that old, because it could be 10 years and it all starts failing, and then you're going to dig up a 10-year-old street, and that's not a good idea. So I don't think there was a lot of water loss that was coming specifically from those pipes. It's probably from other stuff, the First Street chunks that are all still, there's some old 4-inch in there still.
I'm asking about water we're drawing up.
That the
Is
whole
that what
system's kind of connected,
Did-
right? So
okay,
it
so
wasn't
either
a
way.
place where, as we pump it up to the storage tanks, where we were having significant leaks. It's just kind of a general system-wide.
Okay. I thought it was some of
Leakiness.
those main, I guess initially I was under the impression it was some of those main lines coming up, but,
Yeah,
okay.
I don't think so.
Okay. Anything else? Okay.
What about the, there was a water main that broke on, was it up on 61 there by the Forest Service?
Yeah, a couple times.
Yeah, so
Oh.
I remember you had mentioned that at one point and said, yeah, this is on the radar, this might be an expensive.
Yeah,
Where we
I've got
at?
some preliminary ideas from our engineers. It's a 6-digit number, but it's not a 7-digit number, so that feels okay to me. And we'll just wait for a right opportunity and maybe a funding assistance to think about making some improvements up there.
Okay.
And in the meantime, it's really only one customer that's affected, so we'll just fix it if it needs.
If it needs to be, yeah, okay.
All right. Did you have anything else, Craig? All right.
No, I don't.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I attended the CEC meeting about a week ago, and the major topic was the final editing for the wording and text for the kiosks. I believe there's 3 of them, right? And then a little bit of confusion on the additional one that really is part of Craig and the Park Board and Dave Tierstig, the one for George Morrison. A little confusion
Right.
on that. We got that straightened around,
Okay.
but they still need to do some edits and whatever they want for the, and they may use a QR code to get further info,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So that was the topic of that meeting. I did one final Mayor for a Day conversation with the GES group. That was a lot of fun. In both cases, the kids just want, IS 166 and GES ask lots of questions, and they're busy working on their essays, and then we'll do something afterwards for them as well. So that'll be fun. Potentially, there might be a video involved. Should be fun.
Very exciting.
So yeah, we got that done. I got an email today from the county attorney, and with that, the sheriff. They'd like to start up conversations again around cannabis and whatever issues we might be having that way. And I just filled him in that we were contemplating some exploratory meetings just about any municipal joint retail operation, but then there, all the other issues or conversation pieces around cannabis would be a separate, bigger piece. But they'd like to get that rolling and have representation, of course, for city, county, and kind of think this through.
Right.
Something in the new year. So we'll hear more about that. And then with that said, and Craig and Aaron were gone last time we talked about it with this exploratory committee with the county, just for the purpose of should we not, or whatever, a retail municipal operation, not about, how many retail in general would we want to approve, anything that just, does this make sense at all? Michael offered to be one of the people involved. Anyone else would want to participate on that? If not, I will, but if someone else would like to join in those meetings.
Join the joint meeting.
Ooh, it just never stops. All right, okay. Guess Michael and I will do that then. And then we'll just
See where that goes.
yeah, and then we'll heads up to see how they want to do this larger with the,
Yeah.
kind of like we were doing before. They have a variety of various concerns. One of them that surprised me, Molly said that, which I can't believe it isn't in some other ordinance or state law, but that there's no, nothing on minors in consumption. I would have thought there would be already.
Wait, what?
Of cannabis, sorry. Possession or consumption. I'm assuming the state didn't address it, I just assumed it must be buried in another existing. I don't know, but that was one of the points she brought
Yeah.
up, so we need to learn about that. Yeah, I was a little surprised by that one. One of her concerned pieces. Switching topics to the potential assistance with erosion issues in the harbor that I brought up before. We had our meeting with that group and the engineers to see which of the various harbor issues we have they would feel most appropriate with their criteria. And the lucky winner was the main harbor.
Okay.
So by Boulder Park, where the metal, and it's always washing out and
Yeah.
all of that. And a little bit of that wall now for boats docking. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that the solutions they have to present have to be nature-based, and they felt they could do that within those parameters. Now, they understood completely our huge issues here on the East Bay side, and they've offered some help, the engineers of Next Steps, through FEMA, and working, our next visit will be with Mike Keyport, and they gave us some direct action steps we could take, other directions to help find solutions that way. So we'll start in on that, and I owe a communication to all of those landowners to let them know that we have this somewhat in place. Then we also got an email from that same group today saying there's another project through them, this time with NOAA, that might also allow us to once again present any of our issues harbor-wise for money. And this would be more with engineering, more detailed engineering work. So we'll take a look at that. The initial meeting is January 17th, and just kind of see if that lends something for us as well that way. But we'll move forward then. I signed the partnership agreement so we can get our, I'll never remember, PIF, but plan, whatever.
Our helpful document.
Yeah, thank you. That's the best way to say it. And then help with potential funding on that. So we'll move forward with that. It's a start. Let's see. We did talk a little bit, if you'll remember, when Jason Hale came here to talk about a potential housing project up on the Tom Tabota front end of our now city property. And I brought up the fact that, initially we had always said that, one of these properties is up for sale, depending on where City Hall and Liquor Store lands. And so that we should, since we know where that's landing, that we should look into sale and pricing and valuation of those remaining plots of land up there.
Yeah.
So we'll take a look at that and get, Mike's working on getting a realtor's valuation just to begin, and then we can go from there and see what we want to do. But we'll get some more information for all of us to think about from that. So if that sounds good, as the next step, we'll do that. And then, am I missing anything? We had also talked about the Violence Prevention Center had made a formal request for some of the one-time, safety aid, financial aid, and so we still have that on the plate, and considering an amount of.
Well, let's wait and see.
Okay. We did toss some dollars amount, but we will need to do that and take that up
So
and
are they-
put it on officially.
Okay, so it is going to come before us at some point.
Yep, we're keep working on
The money
it.
actually doesn't even arrive yet
Yeah.
till the end of the year. So
That's what I
we're
remember
not-
reading
This
from-
isn't a time crunch issue for us.
No.
that we'll
'Cause we don't
to
have
come
it yet.
After the new year and
Yeah.
talk
But
with them.
we have not forgotten that. So yep, I think that was everything I had. How about that? Yay!
Nice.
And with that, December 13th's meeting, which is not on a Friday, comes to a close.
Yeah, and you were right. Are we late? No.
Are we not? Oh, we are.
We're,
Oh, we're not.
we're not. 7:45. We're 10
Yay.
minutes early.
Wow.
I know.
Go home and start those Christmas cards.
You around next week, Ben?
Yeah, I was gonna